Good morning. So how much does trauma affect a young child? How important is attachment in a youth's life? I will share my journey with you, and the answer to both questions is immensely. My name is Corey, and I'm 28 years old. I'm a recovering addict that's been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, along with a ton of other acronym diagnoses. The start of my story has some pretty graphic details, and the reason I did not leave it out is it had a tremendous impact on my life journey. I did not understand my post-traumatic stress disorder would lead into severe crystal meth addiction, but it sure did. My story starts in London, Ontario, where I was born. My mother was 16 years old, my father was in his 30s. They tried their hardest to raise me and my two younger siblings. London, Ontario, it was Father's Day 1990, beautiful sunny day. My mother and father managed an apartment we lived in, and they were responsible for the pool that was just outside of our patio. That morning, they made a decision to close the pool, and I guess in hindsight, this was a blessing, or many more people would have witnessed what was about to happen. My Aunt Michelle was visiting. I walked outside to hand her a donut. Just as I walked outside, the building shook. A man on the 16th story jumped out his bedroom window totally naked. He hit the 5th story railing and severed both his legs. Before there was time for anyone to react, he hit the ground right beside me. I can still smell the blood sometimes when I have this damn dream that has terrorized me since I was a little kid. My Aunt Michelle, being in shock, jumped up, left me outside with this man, his body imprinted on the ground. Me as a 2-year-old, covered in blood, brain matter. As you can imagine, it was a pretty brutal scene. When the police showed up, they wouldn't let my mom put me in the shower for quite some time because I was considered evidence. Thankfully, what we know now, this would never be allowed to happen. Trauma-informed practice is something I wish people knew about back then. I received very little counseling. He will forget was the answer my mom got as she took me from doctor to doctor trying to figure out my night terrors. We moved to BC the following year without my father. Everything was going good, other than being so full of energy I could never stop moving, which doesn't really make a lot of sense as I could never get a full night's sleep. I was a healthy, happy, very smart young man, as many people told myself and my mom going through elementary school. I was in accelerated classes, never had to open a book, stirred the pot with minor scuffles with classmates. However, being diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactive disorder in grade 3, still I was in French immersion and a straight A student. One thing that held me back was I dreaded going to sleep. It was awful waking up in fear, experiencing sleepwalking, thinking, where am I? Waking up in the corner of the living room or in a bathtub. I would always dream about a lot of blood, moaning sounds, and wake up crying. I was never given any skills to deal with my high energy and lack of concentration. I was, however, put on a drug cocktail of medications that I hated, and I fought my mom tooth and nail every day as she tried to shove a pill down my throat. I started suffering something called sleep paralysis. Once it was happening every night, my mom sat me down and showed me the police reports and the newspaper articles. Something clicked that night. It set off something no one could have expected. I remembered everything. I've had that dream almost every single night, minus my time using crystal meth, where I did everything in my power not to sleep. Sometimes I dream the whole day, sometimes just a loud thud, smell blood, and I wake up crying. I think this was the start of my downfall. I leave out a lot of other traumas I endured because most of them are still too painful for me to speak about, and most happened after I started using crystal meth. I started to smoke pot in grade 6. That summer I was in a lot of fights with students I didn't like. Really started to become more angry with what was going on. Started grade 7, I tried cocaine. Crystal meth fell into my lap shortly after that. I remember my first hit. I was high for 2 days and I didn't have to sleep. And then when I did sleep, I didn't dream. I loved it. I remember waking up after the first time using and not knowing where I was, somewhere in the small town of Aldergrove. I lasted living in my mom's house for a few months after starting to use crystal meth. Then she kicked me out. I don't really blame her. My little brother and sister were suffering immensely because of me. I was ripping off everything I could. With nowhere to go, I was 13 years old. I headed to Surrey. Not sure what it would be there, but I found a gang of guys who helped me get some food and offered me a place to stay. I did not know they were a real gang. This part of my story I leave out as I did many awful things and I hurt a lot of people. I was staying in a shack and that shack got raided shortly after. I remember I talked to some police officers, said I was homeless, and I ended up in the care of the Ministry of Children and Family Development. We are such a reactive system in regards to child and youth mental health. We do not intervene until something bad happens. Why? Time, money. We spend way more on repairing, and I use that word lightly, damage, than preventing it from happening. The ministry tried hard to help me. Every foster house I went into, I'd either use dope in their house, rip them off, or get into a fight. Soon my only options were high-risk foster houses, group homes, safe houses, or the streets, which I spent a ton of time on. I accessed service in this province all over the place. Langley, Surrey, New West, Vancouver, Burnaby, just to name a few. I went to detox a ton, usually when I just need a break. Lots of alcohol and drug counselors, shrinks, anger management groups, adolescent psychiatry units, hospital visits, and even more trips to the ER via ambulance due to overdose. Police interactions, therapists, pill combinations, so many different types, so many different combinations. Trauma therapy was shoved down my throat. Rehab centers, lots of them. Long-term recovery houses that I never lasted more than a few days in. Geez, my social worker even tried to send me up north to Terrace and Prince George recovery houses. I tried 12-step programs, I tried it all. It wasn't until I was done that help actually did something. Service providers always looked at the actions. Drug use, violence, committing crimes. Here's a lost cause, is what I started to hear from service providers. One thing that was never introduced to me back then was mindfulness. I sure wish it had been. It might have saved me a lot of grief. I always joke I'm the $1 million kid. If you add up all the services I received in this province, it's probably how much they spent on me to keep me alive so I can be on this amazing stage. I had never even heard about how important attachment was. No worker tried to build one with me. I was always a youth getting service, then it was on to the next kid. Never felt like a real person. I always felt like a number in the system. I had very few times from 12 until 18. I was clean longer than a week, maybe a couple of weeks, a couple of times. I remember one of the worst things was having to repeat my story to these professionals that I felt like just didn't care. Also, I remember there was more than once I thought I was done, I would reach out for help, and imagine this, a wait list, a long one at that. Something else that really stands out to me from being about 15 is I saw this one alcohol and drug counselor. His damn chair was so much higher than mine. I felt like he was looking down at me, even though looking back he probably was. At this time I would have had face scabs, possibly even a visible track mark. But it made me feel like crap. I left and I never went back. Guess what never happened? The right hand and the left hand never talked about what was going on with me. They worked in total silos. This is why I'm currently involved in a project called the Child and Youth Mental Health and Substance Use Collaborative happening here in the province of British Columbia. Every time I managed to get sober, my dreams got worse, my anger got worse, my anxiety got way worse. I had concluded I was better high. Workers from all sorts of fields wanted to treat my addiction as the problem. When I was 16, my goal was to stay alive till my 19th birthday. I honestly had to try and make this goal. I really didn't think I would make it. I contemplated suicide on more than one occasion. I'm sure that people just looked at me as a gackhead or a speed freak for a really long time. It wouldn't even cross people's minds. It was the only way I knew how to survive. These damn dreams I still experience would have driven me mad. Drugs saved my life and nearly took it all at the same time. And I understand that's a tough concept to get. That's definitely enough about the bad stuff. So what worked? How did I clean up? Well, I got someone pregnant when I was 17 years old. Just a baby having a baby. I kept using until just before my beautiful daughter was born. She was born May 12, 2006. My clean date is May 10, 2006, 2 days before my daughter was born. She gave me a reason to try and live. My last time using, I remember I'd been high for about 6 days. I often lost track of days, and I managed to call this guy Kerry. He ran an anger management program I had to do when I was 13 to avoid being kicked out of the ministry care and to avoid a jail sentence. I don't know why he stood out to me back then, but I'm sure happy he did. I called him and he said, there are youth out there that want help, and if you don't, nothing I say or do will change that. I think I was in New West. He came and picked me up. We started to call detox centers. I felt safe with this man. I felt we quickly built an attachment, something I now know is the most important thing in a youth's life. I got into detox and I remember I was going to leave to get high, but I called him first. Do you want to die? He asked me bluntly. At this time I weighed under 100 pounds, already on death's door. I said some explicit words and I hung up the phone. I went to leave and I stopped and thought, do I want to die? I didn't, so I stayed. This man has never sugarcoated anything with me since that day. We've built an extremely healthy bond and attachment. He provided me a safe place to stay, and guess what? He didn't press me on my traumas. He didn't press me on anything. We'd usually just shoot the shit. Sushi and good conversation. It's amazing how something so simple helped turn my life around. By doing this, my therapy started. Not what they call clinical therapy, real life therapy. With Carrie, I started to look into mindfulness, learned about yoga and meditation, tried things like float tanks. When I started to practice mindfulness in my life changed very, very quickly. I can now sit still longer than 5 minutes, not that any of you can tell. I do, however, always strive for progress, not perfection. Yoga, meditation, I always chuckle about that. If that was introduced to me at 12 to 18, I probably would have laughed in their face. But can you imagine that when I got into kindergarten, it was explained to the staff that I had witnessed such a brutal act of violence at such a young age and I might struggle, and it was introduced to me at 5 years old? I didn't start to practice mindfulness until my early 20s. Could have saved me a lot of trouble, and the system. I do yoga every day, and if I don't, my girlfriend Shelby very quickly reminds me to be centered and to do it now. If I don't meditate, she says the same thing. It is amazing to me that my family feels the impact of my mindfulness. For the last 10 years, I've stayed in touch with CARE, and he runs a program that's now for kids that don't fit in the box. I always say, what box? There isn't a box with mental health and addiction. I recently had a breakthrough and I stated, who am I without my trauma, without my addiction? Because that's all I felt I was. He just smiled and said, who knows, but you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now. He was referring to me helping with the Child and Youth Mental Health and Substance Use Collaborative, happening here in BC, sitting on a local action team, speaking in front of all of you about attachment, yoga, meditation, being absolute lifesavers for youth. About keeping it simple, creating safe places for youth to come where they aren't pressured. Again, about yoga and meditation, about being something so amazing that helped change my life. About something as simple as learning how to take a real breath. I was never taught. That wait list should not be tolerated. If a youth reaches out for help, they need to be able to access services immediately. That medication should not be a first reaction. These are things that, for me, maybe wouldn't have been super effective, but for what I am seeing in other youth, this is really working. We have to reduce stigma. We are people too. Some days I look back at my life and try and figure out why me. Some days I still search for answers to why. But as of today, I do think my journey has led to me to speak to all of you about no kid is too bad to recover. Don't let go of that kid that you think isn't going to make it. I'm so grateful we as a province are recognizing the current system of child and youth mental health has a long way to go. So some pretty amazing news. I sit as a co-chair on the Langley Local Action Team, and they asked me to be a youth advocate in the new Langley Youth Hub that we opened here in May. I graciously accepted. I get to teach youth the skills I learned in regards to mindfulness. We do yoga once a week. We practice meditation, breathing exercises, so simple. Out of everything, I think I'm the most proud of this. I get to teach youth the skills that I was never taught. And for what I am seeing, it is changing their lives every day. That's about 1/10 of my story. I experienced a lot of pain in my addiction and my mental health journey, but I caused even more. Today I am so grateful I did not die before my 19th birthday. So grateful. Every youth deserves dignity while being treated for addiction and mental health problems. Thank you very much.